Alright, so in this video, we have Adam22, Danny Mullen, and Jason Ellis talking about the Brendan Schaub and Bobby Lee drama. Adam, he follows the Fighter and the Kid subreddit, but he's also kind of friendly with Brendan. He did his fight companion a few weeks ago, which he talks about in this clip. And Jason, he's been on the Fighter and the Kid podcast before, but now I guess him and Brendan aren't so cool with each other because he was sticking up for Bobby during all that drama, and Brendan, and I think Brian, unfollowed him on social media. And then Danny Mullen, he's actually a Brendan Schaub fan, and he's had Brendan's handler on his podcast before to talk about doing steroids and dealing with all the haters. And Danny's also a big Chris D'Elia fan, and he thinks all the hate those two are getting is just because people hate the fact that they're good-looking guys that like to get laid.
I think it also ties into what we were talking about earlier. When you're a full guy who gets the mob is out to get you. They hate Brendan Schaub. I think D'Elia caught a little bit of that too, because D'Elia.
Oh, they're all in the same group. Same with Callan. They're all fitter comedians that
MMA
are somewhat
fans.
attractive.
Yes.
As soon as you're a hot, rich, famous comedian, you are a fucking target.
So I'm sure there is some truth to that, but pretty much anybody that's rich and famous is going to have a target. And I also think it's pretty funny that they're trying to defend Brendan and Chris by saying people are just going after them because they're in good shape and they're famous comedians that like to get laid. I mean, there are a lot of other comedians out there that are way more famous, better looking, probably hooking up with more chicks than Brendan Schaub and Chris D'Elia. Well, actually, maybe Chris is hooking up with more chicks. It sounds like that dude gets around, but if that's the reason people are hating on them, then other comedians should be getting a lot more hate than they do. And there are comedians that get just as much hate, if not more, but obviously this doesn't apply to them at all, like Amy Schumer and James Corden. Those are definitely two of the most hated comedians, and I'm sure Adam and Danny make fun of them a lot. I don't know who doesn't, but it's not because people are jealous of them. It's just because they suck. Like, they're really annoying. They seem like assholes and they're not funny. And I'm sure if you could ask one of the 5 fans that Amy Schumer still has left if they could defend her, she'd probably be saying the same shit that they're saying right now. Like, guys are just jealous of her because she's a successful comedian that used to kind of be good looking, and she talked a lot about having sex, and she has a lot of sex. So guys hate that stuff, and that's why she's so hated. I think that's probably what they would say. And Danny and Jason are saying the same shit. Like, people just hate them because they're good looking guys, they get laid, and they're successful, and people are just jealous. And I will admit, I'm sure there are some people that don't like them for that. You know, I'm sure there are some guys that are jealous. I'm sure there are some feminists that just hate any famous guy that's using their fame to hook up with girls. But for the most part, just like with Amy Schumer and James Corden, people definitely have some valid reasons to dislike those two. And I understand if these guys are friends with Brendan, obviously they're going to defend him and try to stick up for him. But you got to be like realistic here. You can't just be like, oh, all his haters, they just don't like good looking guys that are successful and get laid. I mean, that just sounds ridiculous. And I'm sure they're aware that there's more to it than that. And if they're actually good friends with Brendan, I'd give him some advice. Like, I'd try to help him out. Like, tell him to get rid of that team around him. Obviously, they are not getting it done. Like, his channel's slowly dying. They botched the whole Bobby Lee situation. And there's just a lot more that he could be doing with his channel. Like, if you could get him to lean into the drama a little bit and the hate, and if you could get him to start a podcast with Kalila, that could get a ton of views. It could be like another Frenemies. That was like one of the most popular podcasts in the world at one point. So if Brendan could talk her into doing a podcast with him, that would definitely turn his channel around. I don't know if it would help the hate at all, but it would definitely help him get views. And I don't know what he has to lose at this point.
That's really what it comes down
I mean,
to.
it's just, we've seen it over and over and over, where it's just like, and even like Brendan Schaub, like, I mean, the fact that a lot of people think that he has money from his family or whatever.
Wait, they do?
I mean, I've seen that floated in his Reddit from
didn't
time
know
to time.
that.
I have no idea, but like,
The guy fucking works his ass off.
but
Whether you like
they'll
it or
take
not.
anything.
Schaub, dude.
They'll
I
take.
Dude hates me.
Really?
What, Schaub hates you?
Yeah, because I fucking open my fucking dumb ass mouth about shit.
Why? Oh, just talking about a special or anything?
Because they did that thing where they were bullying Bobby Lee, and Bobby Lee was on his podcast saying that they threatened me. And when I heard that, I'd already called Cal and texted him and say, hey, man, I think it's really cool that you fucking just fessed up and said, because on his podcast, he was like, I called him. I threatened him. I acted like a fucking asshole. I feel stupid. I lost my control, and I apologized. And I was like, man, that was really cool of you to do that, especially on your show. But then I heard that it was like a threat of violence. And I'm like, wait, you threatened Bobby Lee with violence?
Where did you say that? Where did you, once you heard that, where did you voice this publicly?
I did a show with a friend that's good friends with them, and I said it in the green room, and now that guy doesn't talk to me, and all those guys unfollowed me on social media. And I was like, oh.
The whole little Brendan Schaub mafia, all his boys?
I don't want to, yeah, sure. Damn. I don't blame him. You know, if you're not going to be 100% in support of them, You know, I don't
I just
know
feel like
where
that
I
was
stand.
a
I just want out. I just don't want to be in a group where people do that.
I like how when Jason said that Brendan hated him, Adam's first reaction is like, oh, what were you talking shit about his special? Because that's what everyone does. But no, I guess he was trying to stick up for Bobby Lee, or he's like pissed that they threatened him or whatever. But now it sounds like Jason regrets even talking about it or bringing it up. And obviously Brendan and Brian regret ever threatening Bobby. So, I mean, they should just wipe the slate clean at this point. You know, they all regret what they did. Just start over. This whole thing is pretty funny, though. Like, Brian went too hard on Bobby, and then Jason went too hard on Brian. And now they're all just, like, pissed at each other. And it sounds like what Jason is saying is probably accurate. Like, if you're not with them, then you're against them. And even Adam was worried about that because he was talking shit about Brendan's special at one point. So he thought he was cut out of the circle. But I guess Brendan still cool with him because he invited him on the fight companion.
That just feels like a situation where Brendan was getting so much shit during that at
really
a certain
was.
point, you just really have to kind of back off and be like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm just going to deal with the fact that everybody thinks I fucked up in this situation. Because, I mean, I just was doing the fight companion with Brendan, and I wasn't sure at a certain point if he was going to, you know, invite me to do shit like that because of the fact that I kind of said on one podcast that I didn't think his special was funny. And then he hit me up to do it. And I figured, oh, that's cool that he's the type of person that doesn't hold that against somebody. Now, the whole Bobby Lee thing was sort of a much different level of drama. Whereas saying you don't think a special is funny is one thing, but that whole Bobby Lee thing was some other shit.
I think Brendan's a funny guy. I think he's a funny podcaster.
I think they're all very talented at what they do.
Mhm.
I don't have any beef. I love Bobby Lee. I don't really even know him that well, but I don't know. He's got one of those things where I just want to help him, which is ridiculous because he's successful. He's got everything. But when I heard that somebody bigger was bullying him, that obviously could beat his ass, I'm like, man, that is some... Why would you do that? Like, if anybody who was a friend of mine did that it was close, I would call them and be like, hey, man, like, that's...
I think the fact that Brendan and Brian did this to Bobby Lee out of everyone makes it even worse. Like what Jason's saying here, I think a lot of people think of Bobby like that, like some meek little guy that can't do anything for himself and he's just helpless. So when they hear that Brendan and Brian are bullying him and yelling at him and everything, it just makes it a lot worse. And obviously it is messed up and they took things way too far. But the fact that they did that to Bobby, that was like the worst person to do that to. And maybe that's why they did it to him, because they knew he wasn't really going to fight back much because he's just not good at confrontation. So that's why the whole thing was a terrible look for them. But it does sound like Jason regrets getting so worked up about it. And it sounds like he probably realizes that he might infantilize Bobby a little too much. And he thinks that like Bobby can't stick up for himself, so he needs to.
They thought, they meaning Schaub and Callan, that Bobby Lee was either actively himself on their Reddit talking shit. Yeah, just for the audience, might not know.
Right.
Or Bobby Lee was endorsing people talking shit about those guys.
Right,
and the reason I'm a little bit more sympathetic to Schaub and Callan is I've seen the level of hate those guys get, especially Schaub, and it really kind of sickens me. I don't think Schaub deserves it. I think sometimes he can be a little too confident and a little too like, oh, I'm the man. You. And it's like, dude, you do have to put in your time and earn your place in comedy. And I get that he's got the I get thing going on and people don't like it. But a lot of the attacks that go on, there's this one where a guy devotes 30 minutes to explaining why Brendan Schaub is a piece of shit while a 3D rendering of Schaub's face is being made
all seen that.
in caricature. And I just like, the guy who did this is so angry and this is so mean that I get why Callan would want to step in when other people are doing similar things to Brendan.
This is so funny hearing this come from Danny Mullen. Like, go click on any video on this guy's channel, and he's going to be acting like an asshole out in public. He's going to be harassing people, getting in people's way, pissing people off. They're just trying to mind their own business. I mean, his whole shtick is being mean to people. And some of his videos are pretty funny, I'll admit, but it's just cringy as hell hearing him say that he's sickened by all the Schaub hate, and that beige frequency video that he's talking about is just too mean. Like, that video isn't even that bad compared to some of the other ones. Like, Unique's channel, that dude goes a lot harder on Brendan. Like, that beige frequency video is just him, like, documenting Brendan's downfall pretty much, and yeah, he's mean to him, I guess you'd say, but compared to some other people on the internet, especially Danny Mullen's channel, it seems like nothing. So I don't know why he's going so hard trying to defend Brendan. It just sounds so cringy coming from him.
He was wrong.
If
and he
you thought
apologized
somebody
for it.
was secretly running a Reddit in which they like had tons of different accounts in which they were shitting on you, if you sincerely believe that, is that the kind of thing that it might be fair to threaten violence against? I mean, I guess maybe I could see myself doing that.
Really?
Well, if I knew that somebody was basically like creating a shitload of different ghost accounts to have this like mass conversation about me, I mean, if you really believe that, now is that anywhere close to reality? Was there ever a time in which it was actually fair for them to think that that was happening? That I'm not so sure about.
So that's the big question. Was there enough evidence for Brendan to actually believe that Bobby was running that Reddit account? Because Brendan claimed he had 300 pages of evidence, but I don't think anybody saw that at all. Like, he didn't show any proof, which you should probably show. Like, it's not that hard to just screenshot the Reddit account, like screenshot where it says Tiger Belly, screenshot the posts that they're making. Like, anybody could do that. And then Brendan claimed that once he called Bobby, the account was taken down. Then just screenshot the account being removed or something. Like, that would have been some evidence right there. Like, at least some people have been like, oh, maybe he's onto something here. But the fact that we saw nothing, that is not a good look. Especially after he went on the Tiger Belly podcast and he's like, I got the evidence, I could show you. And then I think he just showed him like some HTML code, but nobody else saw it. Like, I don't think the public saw that at all. I mean, is it really that hard to just screenshot the Reddit account? He said that the Tiger Belly email was on the Reddit account. So just screenshot that. Like, that's some proof right there. It's better than nothing. And after that whole mess, Kalila came out of it looking even worse than Brendan did. So I think a lot of people could actually believe if she was behind it. But Brendan and his team just handled this so poorly. It's like they don't even know how the internet works. Brendan really thought you'd just be like, I have the evidence. I'm not going to show it to you, but you just have to trust me. You know, why else would I go after Bobby? I obviously have some kind of evidence. And I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if Brendan never even saw the evidence. Or somebody just showed him HTML code and he probably didn't know what he's looking at. And then they're like, this just shows that Bobby's around the subreddit. And he's like, okay, that's enough for me. And then him and Brian went after Bobby. I doubt he even saw anything really. I think he just believed whatever his people were telling him. And I wish he had some evidence because that would have made things so much more interesting. Because I think a lot of people could see Kalila being behind this. But it's not a good look when Brendan's on a podcast and he's like, I have the evidence. And Kalila's like, well, I've been asking you for it for like 2 weeks. Where is it? And he's like, I'll show you at the end of the podcast. And then I think he showed him, but they just were like, oh, it's just some HTML code. I didn't really know what I was looking at. I think that's what happened. And I mean, Brendan just doesn't know how the internet works. Like, you're going to lose that situation if you don't show people, like show the public. Obviously, Bobby and Kalila are going to deny it, even if it is legit evidence and you just show them, they're going to downplay it. And I'm sure they didn't really know what it was. It doesn't sound like there's anything there. So I think Brendan really needs a new team around him. Obviously, they did not handle this situation very well. It was a complete disaster. They handled it like the worst way possible. So that's about it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you like the longer form videos, I'm going to keep doing them on here, but also I'm going to post some to my Patreon account. Make sure you check that out. And then make sure you leave me a comment on this video. Then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.